So then I will start. So I'm going to present today about the two war games. One is the Colapso that works about the whole 30 Years' War from 1618, 1648. And later at the end, I'm going to talk about the Spanish Road, which focuses on a specific logistical route very important in that period that took part from Lombardy in northern Italy, which in the map you can see here. So it has gone from Milano all through this yellow dotted line, just after Luxembourg in Flanders. But this is a specific, a small short game that has been recently published by 3CI magazine number 37 by RBM Studio. It's a solitaire game about 20-25 minutes gameplay. It's quite challenging. I even talk about that with Mark Herman and he really loved the game, but it's so fun and challenging that it shows how important was that route. But thinking about the collage, which is first the game I'm going to talk about, the art that you can see, just a bit around, I'm going to show you. This is made by Donald Hegarty, which you may know from Labyrinth, Mr. President, Fields of Fire, and so many other great games. And at this point of the art, we have focused now on just helping everyone to be included in the game. So everyone with a visual disability, we have been focused mainly with two things on the colors. So in the game, these regions that are colored is what we call home regions. I'm going to explain a bit later. But they are in red for one of the factions and in blue for the other. So these two colors are easily to be identified by those with visual disabilities, so we are working especially on that now. It's not finished the art on that way, but it's on the way. In the game there are two factions, what we call Imperials, which they belong to three nations mainly. It's Austria, it's Bavaria, and Spain, which in the game they have three home regions. This is in the color red, a bit more intense. It's Lombardy, Franche-Comté, and Flanders. The color coded more intense is to easily identify them by these nations, but the color in red is to identify them as a faction. So that's two things, faction in red and nation with a different color intensity. And we call it Imperials and not Catholics because in the period really it was a mixture between Catholics as Austria, Spain, Bavaria. But throughout the whole war, there was some conflicts coming, and this means that some nations join in, which were Protestants, as Saxony, as we can see here in the map, or other nations. So it's more accurate to call them Imperials, and the other faction is the Protestants, what we see in the blue. In the gameplay, there are two main Protestant nations, what is called the Protestant Alliance, which is an abstraction of all these minor states in Germany, which they had a religious Protestant belief, mainly because as you may think that the Holy Roman German Empire was about 370 approximately different political entities of different size, different names, so it's easier to identify them on that way. And the other main one is the United Provinces. We see here in the more dark blue. But we have a third type of nations, what in the game is called independent. And those are the nations that on the game that started in 1618 as independent or not belonging to one of the two factions, in support to them, they can shift sides throughout the diplomacy and throughout game operations, which I'm going to explain. Some of them are England, which in the game they have only one space to reflect.
Abbiamo fatto bene.
Brandenburg, Saxony, Hungary, which in design terms it's a mix between Hungary and Transylvania, but it's easier to explain as Hungary, and the papacy, which is a bit outside of the map. So these nations have a yellow color side, so we have a red for the Imperials, blue for the Protestants, and yellow for the independents. So as we can see here in the setup, for example, here that I'm showing, for example, in Lombardy, Gonzalo Hernandez de Cordoba. This is a Spanish leader, Imperial, which is in red, so it's easy to identify them. But on the contrary, we see Mansfeld, which is in blue here in Mannheim. Actually, this is reflecting the start of the conflict. In the games, there are mainly about 60-70% of the game took place in the what's called the Holy Roman German Empire. For the gameplay in 4EZ, we refer as the Empire, which it took part from the whole north, from Holstein to Schleswig, of the Baltic Sea, just up to the south with Tyrol, Salzburg, Austria. But it includes also northern Hungary and northern Italy. It was Lombardy, Savoy, Cremona, Mantua, Parma, and Genoa. And also United Provinces and Flanders, which is nowadays known as Belgium. At that moment was part of Spain, and some historians, they refer to the Spanish Netherlands, so we may have a look at that. And the three main nations in France that are included in the game are Calais-Picardie, Champagne, and Paris. These are an abstraction regions, as all the regions in the game, which doesn't refer necessarily to the historical political entities. But for gameplay and for easy abstraction, it was referred that way. You have to think that the game is in a strategic focus. It's a strategic war game, so it's not operational, not tactical. However, they have some minor aspects that may think about that they are operational because armies move around the map, and tactical because there are battles. But this is just for easy explain of the strategic concept. Then, so we have to think on another part of the regions, which is called the electorates. There are 7. It's Brandenburg, Saxony, Bohemia, the Lower Palatinate, which in the game may shift later on to Bavaria, Mainz, Trier, and Cologne. All these 7 electorates, which are also regions, they give extra prestige points, which I'm going to explain now, and can refer to more actions in the game. In the game, for example, one of the regions, that Lower Palatinate, they have a control box, which now is controlled by the Protestant, and they have above 2 numbers, a 4 in green and a 3 in purple. We may change these colors for the colorblind people, but for now on, this is what we are taking for. The 4, it defines the victory points that you gain when you control the region. And that movement of victory points is shown at the diplomacy administrative map that we see here above. So we have the victory points. This is like a Twilight Struggle and so many other games. So if you win 3 points, for example, the Protestant, they move 1, 2, 3 for your side. Later on, you move back 2 for the Catholic, for the Imperials, 1, 2. As simple as that. And the second value that we see in purple, which in the lower part in these 3, it shows the prestige points that you gain when you control the region. You mainly gain prestige points by controlling regions, but also with successful sieges, with battles. But you may lose as well prestige points when a leader may be lost in a battle, and also when they fail on an evasion. So why this mechanic is important in the game? Because generally when you are ahead on victory points, you tend to be a bit more conservative. So these prestige points, they refer to you of how good or bad, if we can think about that way, has been your performance throughout the turn. And they are recorded in the diplomacy administrative map that we see on the screen here in the prestige track. These 3 colors that we may change for more logistical purposes and to be more easy to identify, we accumulate points. So for instance, let's say that we win at 2 prestige points for controlling a region for the Protestant. So now it's 22, 21, sorry. So we move 1 and 2. If it's something win only during a term, specific actions like a battle, sieges, maybe losing a leader, failing on evasion, is what is called temporary, which at the end of the turn, you will have to deduct from the total, but you score as well. So let's say that you win a battle and you score 1 prestige point. So you go for the total from 21 to 22, but also from the temporary. So at the end of the turn, you deduct 1 prestige point from the total. That's how you record it, but why is this so important? As I refer, just pushing the players to perform actions, because if you see in red, this is what is called low prestige. In gray, it's medium prestige, and in this light blue, it's high prestige. What is the difference? At the start of each turn is what is called planning phase. It's one of the 4 main phases of the game. It's planning phase, where you prepare yourself for your game, your turn or campaign as we think. The campaign phase, where you play your actions. The end of turn phase, which is more administrative. And the victory points phase, where you check if you have achieved your victory, if it's the last turn of a scenario. So during the campaign, you have to move around all this prestige, but on the planning phase, depending on the place where your marker is, it defines how many actions you can do the planning phase. So for instance, you can recruit more leaders if it's in high, that's in low prestige. You can have more capabilities that may help you to perform your actions during the game if your prestige is high than low. For example, you can recruit no leaders if your prestige is low. You can recruit 1 extra leader if it's in medium, or up to 2 if it's in high, from those that the turn sequence allows you to choose from. And that prestige is what really drives players to perform actions. Maybe they're not successful, or maybe they're yes, but they are pushing to move armies and trying to conquer regions, successful sieges and battles. There are 3 types of cities. Everything in the map that you see with all the shapes. I'm going to zoom in a bit higher. All of them are called cities. It's where you place a unit and they move to and from. Those who have no shield, for instance, Fulda here in Hesse, it's called minor cities. They are easy to control because you only have to spend 1 movement point to control it. I'm going to be on that in a moment. Those with a shield that they have, for example, here in red or in a dark, they are called fortified cities. The difference is between the red shield, it's fortifications, and the dark ones are capitals. So they have a more important and relevance in the game because they have some actions that they may perform in a more intense way depending on which of the 2 fortified cities they are. But that's the first number which is referred as well. For instance, here in the lower part it's 4. To control the region, you need to control all of the fortified cities within that region if they have. Fortifications that are in red and capitals if they have. So in the example of Lower Palatinate, you have Mannheim and Heidelberg, which are capitals, so those 2 you have to control. Anyways, to control the region. But you have more minor cities, Landau, Saarbrücken, and Koblenz in the north. So why do we have 5 cities and I only need to control 4? Yes, you're right. But you will get 5 victory points. But you need to control these 4 cities because that's the value that shows here on the control box above it. As simple as that. But there are regions of 1 city, correct? This reflects their political relevance as mines, as an electorate in that case. So how do you control mines if there is only one city? So simple. You just need to control that city, and you will get 2 victory points and 1 prestige. In the game, units, they move around the map, and they are just moving from city to city. And if we see, for example, here in Brussels, the names we have to adjust it, so I know that it's for historical accuracy, so that's something coming in. But they move, for instance, these tertiary units, they move from Brussels to Liège through this regular connection. How is the movement? So you have to spend 1 movement point to move across cities that you control. So if the Imperial, they control Brussels, and they want to move to Liège, which is now a neutral base, they will cost them 2 movement points because they don't control the region and it's the city as well. But let's say that Brussels, the Liège was controlled by the Imperials. Since they control the city, they only need to spend 1 movement point to move from Brussels to Liège. So the fortification costs 2 movement points to enter, but to move to a capital that you don't control, it costs 3 movement points. This is a simple way to reflect that there was some small fortifications and some defenses that they block the movement of foreign units to that city that it was not controlled by the attacker. Now the question is, how many movement points you can move? And that's when we explain, if you have 1 unit as only, let's say that's for instance here, this tertiary Liège, they want to move, you have a combat value, that is a 5, and a movement, that is a 6. Simple as that. Besides that, all the units, they have a reduced size. So the values may change within the nations. So they want to move from Liège back to Brussels, which it could be 1 movement point because they control the city. They move to Arshot in the north, 2 movement points because they control the city. But if they would like to move to Breda, which is a fortification not controlled, it will cost 2 extra points. So in total will be 4. No problem, because they have 6, so they could reach. But if you move more than 1 unit at the same time, as more of the CDGs and all the games, you move with the slowest unit. As for example here, in Mannheim, where Mansfeld has units, if they move all these units, how they may move with the slowest units, which is these 3. If, for example, you don't have a leader in a city, it's what is called a formation. And you may have to activate units separately. But if you have a leader, or more than 1, it's what is called an army. There is a stacking limit in the game of 7 units, doesn't matter the type, and I can explain now the type of units. But what's the benefit? Because you will spend the same cost of moving a unit, which will be 1 operation point, which I will explain all with the cars later on, but you can move up to 7 units. The only extra need is that the car should be at least this value in yellow that we see, that the car should have at least these values. So a card of 1, 2, and 3 could help to activate Mansfeld. How many types of units we have in the game? So we have 5, but generally we have to say that there are the leaders and the detachments, which are a bit different, and we have 3 types of units. But in total, we can agree that there are 5. The first one that I'm going to explain to you is what is called detachments. Detachments are units that they don't move. Mainly they are a small group of units of cavalry or small local militia that they block the movement. However, if it's your units from your faction that they move, if, for example, we have 1 troop here in the south, and they move to Koblenz here, and they want to move to Koblenz, they have movement points, so they can do the movement, and the detachment doesn't move. And they could continue moving around from goblins, for example, to Trier. They still have movement points, which is fine. But what happens if it's another faction that's moving around? So the movement will be cancelled. So if a tertiary unit was here in Cologne and they moved to Koblenz, they moved and it was one movement point. Oh, okay, one movement point. They still have 5 more, but since there is a detachment, the detachment is removed from the game. It may come later on when there is a reorganization of detachments, but the movement is stopped. This is an example that I had seen at Mark Herman's games in 3CI, both at Gettysburg and Waterloo. So it blocks a strange moves on armies moving around on the map. So it's not a Hood driving north. It's not like that. Because the distance, you have to think it's much more important here in that area. So it helps to understand that the detachments are just blocking movement. The other types of units are 3. They have militia, which they have this M, and I'm going to zoom in. They have the shape of the leader and the color yellow. Why there are 3 types of ways to recognize the unit, with the shape, with the letter, with the color? It's for color-blinded purposes. So there are some people who may be able to understand a cheat or a counter this way for the colors, some by the shape, some by the letter. So this is for helping purposes. We try to be as clean as possible with the counters, but that's the easiest way we find. These are militia. Then we have troops. That is called the TR. And this red color, but also with the square. All of the units, they can flip around if they are reduced, so that's easy. And we have a third type of unit, which is called veterans. And I'm going to zoom in here. In Vienna, with Austria, they have VET, which is in a dark blue and with a circle. And as we have seen here, check it. Okay. For example, in Besançon, we have the Spanish tercios. In gameplay, tercios are veterans. They don't have any difference. This is just for historical purposes. So this is the simple way to reflect how units were formed, but at the same time, how they may be able to promote. One of the things you have to understand is this turn, it took about 2-3 years, so the units could be promoted throughout the battles, but also at the end of the turn. So they may promote from militia to troop, or from troop to veterans, with the only exception of the tertios that they have specific recruitment points to use at the end of the turn. And we have the leaders. We have the generic leaders, which they don't have any value, which are just simply one of the examples. Okay. Imperial. Okay. Here it is. They don't have any name referred, or there is the name leaders, which they have some, which is the Duke of Feria, for example. They have 3 values. This shows like a card. They need to have a card of 1, 2, or 3 to activate the leader. But this leader specifically, they need to have a leader of 3. The operation cost will be the same, but the card needs to be a 3. And I'm going to show one of the cards. One moment. As here, for example, with this card is Mutiny. We have a shield with an operation point. So, for instance, this leader may perform a movement operation which has a cost of 1 operation point. I'm going to explain later. The cost will be 1 from the 2, but the card needs to be 3 because the leader activation rating is 3. So he cannot use that card to activate for movement. But he can have, if he is able to activate by the operation points or by the event, They have the first two, which is the battle rating, and the 0 is the siege. There are other administrative counters for control, or showing which electorate is controlled, and also for the diplomacy, which are all on this track. So as we have seen, you gain victory points for controlling your regions. That's a political dimension. You move armies around the map to defeat the others. That's a military dimension. But you have this diplomacy dimension. So the core of the game is this 3 dimensions focus, which is trying to explain how easy is the game to be handled, but how difficult it is to master it, because there's so much strategic depth, and you have so many options to choose from, and at the end you have basically few resources. So the units, yes, you can see they have 3 colors. It's in red, this is Imperial, belong into an alliance. The gray, it's neutral, and the blue, which is Protestant allied. So if it's in gray, there's no problem. So the units are not on the map, but they have no game effect. But they can move around from back and forth, no problem. And you have 5 nations, mainly it's Saxony, Brandenburg, England, the papacy, and Hungary. The papacy has no military units, but they give extra resources to the imperials. So this is a change that we have to make, a small typo mistake. But also you can choose to influence over the Spanish stability. As we may think, or if you know about the history, the internal stability of Spain was degrading progressive, with some revolts. Portugal was independent, there was revolts in Naples, Sicily, in Catalonia. So this is a simple way, an abstract way of how it's going to be degraded throughout the game. Why is important this effect? Because the tertiary units are the only way that they can recruit or restore reduced tertius are with this step. So as long as it progresses, they can receive less tertiary points, but also less resources. And this level, it shows that they cannot come back. So even if you perform a diplomacy operation, you cannot come back. However, the cards, they show a different approach, a different text, so you are able to choose from a card. We always say the card has presence over the rules. This is as almost all games. But the Protestant is thinking also about with the foreign intervention. So how Denmark, Sweden, and France intervene directly in the game. When this foreign intervention counter, they move across from 1 to 2, there is no game effect, but if they move to the 3, Denmark intervenes. Later on with Sweden, there are some reinforcements, and then France. This goes gradually. And here you record all these resources, if you have some reserves, and the game turn. And if someone wants to record how many operation points they have spent. But important, this is a point-to-point map. As we have seen that the armies, they move across the map for the connections, but that's a CDG with the cards. So once again, I zoom in. We have 2 operation points. The card has from 1 to 3 operation points. And you can perform some operations I'm going to explain later on in just a moment. This is all CDGs. 2 operation points, you can perform operations. In the game, there's more flexibility because if you are able to perform more than one operation point, or one operation because the operation point is only 1, for example, you can perform it twice. And also if you want at the same time and place. Why this is decision focus? Why have I included that way? Because I want you to explain your failures or your successes. It's up to you how you perform it. But you also have on this gray shield a value of 1. So for instance, this is a mutiny. So if you want to perform the event, which it says that mercenaries adjacent to a city with friendly units, they shift to your faction. So this cost of 1 is deducted from the operation point of the card. And you can perform it in the order that you prefer. First the event, then the operation points, or even what I suggest to the playtesters when I show the game. If your intention is to play with 1 operation point, just do it. Just see how it works, and then you decide. And this is a specific focus that I wanted to give to a card. The events may be powerful. So the cost of events, they are powerful. So if they are not that powerful, the cost of events are less powerful. But at least you will still have 1 operation point to use for operations. And it doesn't matter which one you choose, at least you will have something to do. There are some cards that they have an asterisk in the text that says if perform the event, just remove it from gameplay. That's an example. There are campaign cards which allows you to move multiple armies at the same time. And if you see at the bottom, it says opening yes. So there are 5 areas in the game when new cards are introduced, which it shows how historically has evolved the game throughout the history of 30 years. From the opening years, the Danish intervention, Swiss intervention, French intervention, and the final years. But also you can recruit and use them in one of the operation points to use as a reserve. As here we see in the diplomacy map. So if you have recorded 1 operation point and the card is 2, so you can use that as a 3 operation point card. So which operations you have it? So what can you do with the operation points? If you have 7 options, there are 7 operations. However, one you can divide it into 2. You can record it as reinforcements. So if you record 1 operation point, you will have 2 resources. So for instance, the Imperial, so we have to change these counters. 1 operation point for reinforcements, it means 2 resources. So at the end of the turn, you can use these resources to restore units, to recruit new ones, to influence over diplomacy. These are reinforcements, simple as that. The diplomacy, as I have explained, it costs 2 operation points to move. Doesn't matter if it's on the left or the right. Usually that is called a counter diplomacy. But the first time that you use the diplomacy to move, you just shift it. So at the next time the player wants to influence over this diplomacy, costs 3 operation points. So we have seen on the playtest that so many players, about 70%, they use this flip going around. And I have talked with Volker Runke about some of the options of how to fix that. And he gave me a good insight. I just explained an idea. And this way, you are forced to think about, it costs before 2 operation points because someone else moved it. Is worth the investment of 3 movement points to move it back? Maybe if Saxon is in the 3, and the Protestants will have to spend 3 points to avoid becoming Imperial allied. Maybe that's a good reasoning. But otherwise, you have to think very carefully because operation points are scarce. Then we have the siege. So in order to conquer a minor city, which is the ones that I have explained, they have no shield because 1 movement point when you move. So if this troop, they move here, and they just spend 1 movement points from those they have it, just thinking that if the region was Protestant control, they just place here the Imperial control, that's it. But for those of with the shield, you need to take them by a siege. So if after a movement you are able to reach a fortified city, you can spend a siege. You can lay a siege without any operation point cost. But every time a siege is laid, and also when there is a siege attempt, the faction is besieging, it suffers attrition, which it means shifting 1 unit. If they have more than 1 full strength, they can choose from. And not until all of them are reduced strength, they can be removed to the first pool. So how you succeed on a siege? You have, remember, the leader has the second value, which I'm going to zoom in this case is 0. But on the contrary, Spinola here as a siege leader of 2. You have also something what is called capabilities that you gain at the start of the turn during the planning phase, which helps you to perform some actions. This is what, if we may think about some CDGs, this card that gives you +1 DRM. But I wanted to remove this card so it's easily to explain, but also it doesn't slow down the game with so many cards spent on that. So it helps to perform more actions, but it's faster, the game. So these capabilities that it's, for example, they have the Catholic, the artillery. Here, just an example. If we flip it, it says +1 DRM in siege or major battle. So some capabilities, they give you one option or the other. More than one, maybe one. And you can use this example, for instance, +1. And you have a leader of 2, so +3. But the other faction besiege may have some, so they may be able to use it. The only bad with these capabilities is that it's only one use per turn. So once you use it, it's gone for the rest of the turn. So if you use it in a siege, maybe you don't use it in a major battle. So it's something that you have to be very careful when to use them, because they may bring unique moments, boost your actions. And then you have some DRMs, as you may think about that. If there is an army adjacent, there is some DRM. If there is a leader inside the besieged city, and so on. So just to simplify, if you roll a 1, it's automatically failure. Doesn't matter which is the direct modifiers. Nothing happens, but you suffer attrition. If there is a 10, that's automatic success, except for capitals, that you cannot roll for automatic success with a 10. If the die roll with all the modifiers is 2, 4, it's no effect. It's the same. No effect. You suffer attrition, but there's no increase on the siege. It's one more. Siege. Yeah, here, I put it again. But if you roll from 5 to 9, the siege increases the value, so it's a 1. You still suffer attrition because all these preparations, it needs to have some effect. But in the moment that you must move from 1 to 2, it's automatic success. So you gain control of the fortified city. So it's very simple to take control of the city. However, you have to plan it carefully. As we have seen the siege, the diplomacy, the reinforcement, we have another option which is called deploy. It's how you may introduce new militias. You may wait until the end of the turn to use the resources gained to perform that action, but during the game, you can use one of the operation points of the card to perform the deploy. And now is what it really matters, the color of these regions, what is called home regions. So Spain has 3, so it's Flanders, the French Comté, and Lombardy. So in a capital, which is a grey shield, you can recruit 2 new militias. If that's Spain, that's Spain. But if it's a fortification, which is in red shield, it's only 1. So you can choose. And also, we have the Protestants, which has a special action, which is called the naval blockade for 2 operation points. They can place a naval blockade, which is this counter, which may give them more resources during that placement, but also at the end of the turn and deduct from the Imperials. How many naval blockades you can place during a turn? It's a maximum of 2. But in the North Sea, you can place 2. Here in the Baltic as well is 2. But south, 1 in the Adriatic and 1 in the Mediterranean Sea. Only the Protestant. And someone may ask, why you can place a naval blockade in the Mediterranean Sea and in the Adriatic? So if there was no sea movement across the area, there was no ships from the Protestants moving across the whole France, Spain, Portugal, just there. Well, there's so much history in the game. I'm not putting everything. That will be a plot. There will be too much Chrome. But this is specific, it's so easy to abstract, and that's something the Imperial has to think about. It's costly, so it's 2 operation points. And how they may remove these nuove blockades. There are some events, and at the end of turn, there is what it's called the Imperials. They may remove based on their prestige. So once again, here we see how important it is to have this higher prestige as possible. It's not easy, and we are just very sure that now the values are quite okay, so most of the gameplays will go around this medium prestige. That's never blockade, but I'm just leaving for the end what is the most important is the movement. I explained you the movement, but very generic, how they move. At the end of a movement, if you move all the armies, let's say for instance here, you move all around, that's easy. And let's say there's all these Imperials. Okay. They have it here. Okay, so let's say like they were here in Ingolstadt, it's in Bavaria, and they move to Nuremberg. It's a capital, it needs to move with 3 movement points, they have enough, fine. They also have some cavalry, which is one of the capabilities that give +1 on movement. But if you use them in a movement, you can use in siege or in battle. So here, the rival has one option. If there is a fortified city, they can withdraw inside, or they can accept battle. But this is a minor battle, which is the same cost of 1 operation point. There's no extra. What is the difference between that? Because you can only contribute with 8 strength. So here they have 2 and 2, the Protestant. And then Imperials they have 4, 3, 7, and 4, 11. So however they have 11, they will only contribute 8, but they could take losses from that. They could add a modifier of the leader. They roll a die both factions, and the one with highest die roll modified, they win. They win some prestige. The winner takes 1 attrition, which means they flip 1 unit, and the loser 2, and they have to withdraw. And this reflects a minor battle, which was the small skirmishes, small battles. So there was the 85% of the battles of the 30 Years' War. Because the major battles, as we may think as Lutzen, Nordlingen, Bautzen, Fleurus, the White Mountain, it's 5, 6, 7, 8. Just let me say that there's not that many. What is the difference between these? Instead of 1 operation point, it costs 3. Except that an event that allows you the difference. As I said, that event has preference over the rules. Why is more beneficial? Because instead of 8 strength points, you can contribute up to 14. And you can use the modifiers from the capabilities, and also for one of the operations that is, let's say that you have veterans in the army, so they give you a +1. If you have tertius, you have a +1, or you have 2 or more, they give you +2. So all these modifiers that we may know from the other games, I'm just trying to simplify and just explain it generically. They help you. And they help you with the battle, but there is a contrary that they give you 3 prestige points, but the losses are high. So you have to think really
mi deve iscrivere a questo gruppo.
use them. In the game there are different scenarios, so the full campaign it just takes for 10 turns. But you have minor campaigns for 1 as the introductory and learning scenarios up to 2 and 5 and 6. But there is also one optional rule which allows, if both players agree, to continue playing after the end of the turn when the scenario says that you have to end, and just continue, because maybe you are having fun and you have some time, so you want to extend your gameplay with your fellow dude. So why not? Just continue, and you apply the modifiers as the last turn 10 in case there is a tie. Simple as that. And what I'm gonna explain is what I think that makes the Colapso unique and different is the use of cost for the player's decision.
Terribile.
Vero?
There is no deck for the Protestants, no deck for Imperial, so it avoids the neutral planning, which it really slows down the game. It's not a analysis paralysis game, so you have to think about that. There's the 3-dimension focus, which I think is the core stone of the game. So you have so many things to choose from, and you have to be able to match them the most beneficial way as possible, which is not easy. You have to balance all your actions. There is an accurate historical gameplay and these historical decisions, but you're not forced to follow the history. So you can take your own path, your own decisions. You have to think, if you're the Imperial, maybe you are Philip IV, the King of Spain, or Ferdinand II, the Emperor. Why, instead of going to Lower Palatinate as Ambrosio Spinola, why didn't move to the north? Up to you. Maybe you cross a neutral region and you suffer 1 victory point for the neutrality valuation. But maybe you want for a strategic decision. It's up to you. At the end of the turn, you have to be at one of your home regions or a region you control, otherwise you suffer attrition. Maybe you think 1 unit is not enough. Why? It doesn't matter, but maybe you have been losing units for attrition for battles, for sieges, and other actions, so you have to think that carefully. The planning phase. Based on your prestige, you can plan your actions, but doesn't mean that you are going to be successful. You have to think about it, but it gives you the opportunity. The diplomacy administrative track. How do you move with the diplomacy? The siege operation, it's easy. Other games, they don't have sieges. Maybe that's fine, as long as it's clearly explained. Here, I wanted to explain that. But also, how you gain resources here is quite unique. You gain resources by the reinforcement operation. But if we go to the diplomacy administrative mat, you also gain resources, the Imperial, at the end of the turn, depending on the place of the papacy is. For the Spain stability, and the Protestant, as well as the reinforcement, there are some events, but there are not that many, based on the place that the foreign operation occupies at the foreign intervention track, and also for the naval blockades. But also, when you gain control of a city, you can decide to ravage the region, which is this yellow marker. If it's a minor city, you gain 1 resource. If it's a fortification in red, it's 3, and a capital, which is the star ones, 3. 5, sorry. The first time you ravage, you just place the yellow, it has no effect. The second time, you just flip it in gray. So you cannot ravage more cities. You can take control, so if that's your purpose for controlling the region, that's fine. But you will suffer attrition with the gray. If armies and units, they move to from that region.
No, grazie.
So what comes next? So now is the advanced gameplay test. So everyone who is able to join with the playtest, they want to have a look, just feel free to let me know. I post on BGG. I'm able to contact with you on Discord, or the best way it's easiest for you. If someone wants to record gameplay in English, as I'm doing now, it's fine. So that's why I want to thank you, Riccardo Massini. And also, you have to think on the big pictures. The collapse that talks about the whole 30 Years' War. But there is opportunity to talk about minor important things in the game of the history, and that's the Spanish Road. So, and that has been published at the last 3CI magazine number 37, specific gameplay. So I'm gonna show you now with screen. One moment. I'm gonna show that one. Just one moment. Okay, goes to sharing the screen. Okay. So that's the second game I want to show you briefly, so I'm not trying to explain exactly all the rules. So this is the Spanish road that if you may know, it's from the 3CM magazine, and before it was published at one game convention in Spain. It's 20-25 minutes gameplay. And so far I've seen that people having a lot of fun, especially with Mark Herman that has sent me some message, and I'm really thankful for him. Which you are moving armies from Lombardy, and your goal is to reach Flanders. If you don't reach Flanders, you fail. If you reach Flanders, you evaluate your performance. But during the gameplay and your turns, you have to choose between two operations. You can move, you can try to besiege the region to control it, you can defeat armies that they move around, but you have to be careful because then it's first you move, but then the armies, the enemies move, so they may move through you. You have a limited strength, so you have to be really careful on how you manage your resources. And that's the same thing here at the Spanish Road as with the Colapso. It's important to know that a game is easy to play, that it's historical accurate, but also give so many replayability, and it's not really a sandbox, but it gives you enough opportunities to think about other options, but also more important to have fun. The 30 years one is a very important moment in history and not well known. There are not many games. So it's important that we may think outside the box and what we may have think in other games and give an opportunity to these games so we know about the history and how Europe was changed. It changed from 1618 with the dominance from the Habsburgs, Spain and Austria. So then in 1648, from France. So it's a big, important change in Europe, geopolitical change. So this game has to show that in a more fun way. And saying this, I just finished my presentation. I try to be as short as possible and concise. So if you have any questions, just feel free to get yourself in. If you have any questions later on you want to move or to ask me, I'm going to leave in the comments my contact information, my email. So just feel free to contact me if you want to test the game. If you are interested in just talking about the history, about a specific period of the Swedish intervention, the Danish everything, so all the help is more than welcome. So saying this, I'll leave the doors open. So if you have any questions, comments, just feel free to let me know and hope that you had fun with the presentation.
Danielle, just to tell you that I'm back. I was back 10 minutes ago, so everything's fine here from the recording side.
Thank you so much, Ricardo.
Oh, and one thing I want also to thank. So since I'm here, I also want to thank Paolo Rodolfo Carraro. Who with me gave a very good contribution to the Italian scenario of the 30 Years War, because we have
Absolutely.
a specific scenario on the Italian theater of operations, which is very seldom covered in simulations, also by Italian games. But Paolo is a true expert on that theater of operations, and we were very grateful to Daniel to be able to give our contribution with a specific scenario to this very, very important theater of operations in the 30 Years War.
Exactly. I'm really interested in the period. I know a lot, but I have to admit and have to be humble that there is always someone who knows more than you.
Especially on these specific topics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I may think about what is Northern Italy. Okay, I may be 99% accurate, not 100. So when I learn from Ricardo and from Paolo, it's so much important for me to adjust whatever is needed. So it's historically accurate, but it leaves you enough opportunity to explore options. But leaving Northern Italy outside the map, it's difficult to understand the 30 Years War without that, as well as Flanders and the United Provinces. So I'm really helpful for that. Okay. So if you have any more questions, comments, people, just let me know. Okay. So I just stop sharing the screen. So if you have any more questions, just let me know. I will leave my contact information here. Also, Harold Buchanan has my contact, so if someone wants to have a talk with him, and he will be able to provide my email. So thank you for your time. I hope that you enjoy it and that you will enjoy all the presentation with SDHistCon. And if you're around, I suggest to have a look later on with the presentation from Ricardo, from everyone else about the gaming and just telling a story, because the game tells a story and it's always so much fun and to improve and to learn more about it. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. I wish you a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.